Hello, I'm Bill Bullard with RCAF USA, the voice of the independent cattle producer in the United States of America. Well, it should be no surprise that globalist agribusiness corporations hate mandatory country of origin labeling, or MCOOL, and so too does the federal government. Now, neither globalists nor the government want mothers and fathers to know where the beef sold in U.S. grocery stores was born and raised, what production practices the animals were subjected to, or what food safety standards the beef had met. So let's analyze this. First, why would the government oppose MCOOL that requires beef to be labeled as to its country of origin? Now, to answer this, we must look at the priorities of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, or USDA. One of its historical priorities was to advance globalism, the unfettered international trade in beef. And based on this mindset, the USDA actively facilitated imports of foreign beef into the United States. So here's a direct quote from the USDA regarding why it was facilitating imports of foreign beef. USDA stated, "Imports of a commodity generally serve to increase net social welfare. To the extent that consumer choice is broadened and the increased supply of the imported commodity leads to a price decline, gains in consumer surplus will outweigh losses in domestic producer surplus." In other words, the USDA believes that cheaper imports give consumers more choices while driving down beef prices. And these benefits outweigh the harm that cheaper imports cause to American cattle farmers and ranchers. Now, this government priority conflicts with MCOOL because if consumers are given a choice between domestic beef and foreign beef, and if they choose domestic beef, then demand for foreign beef will be reduced. Now, this is not conjecture. The USDA did its own investigation of MCOOL before Congress repealed it. And here is a quote from that investigation. "Packers were not able to sell beef with Canada or Mexico labels for the same prices as beef produced entirely within the United States. In fact, the nation's fourth largest beef packer stated this: the customer demand for beef from cattle born in a foreign country is smaller than the available supply of beef from cattle born in a foreign country produced each week. In other words, the supply of foreign cattle in the U.S. exceeded the consumer demand for the foreign beef produced from those foreign cattle." So now we see why the USDA and the globalists oppose MCOOL. If MCOOL is reinstated for beef, the USDA's priority to facilitate more foreign beef is thwarted. Now, this information begs the question, why wasn't the public informed about this 348-page investigative report by USDA? And the answer is because the USDA did not want it made public. We obtained it through a Freedom of Information Act request made by an investigative reporter. Now, we also know that the globalist beef packers and their allies, including the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, don't like MCOOL because they alleged in a lawsuit that MCOOL violated their constitutional right to not be compelled to label beef. In fact, they argued in their lawsuit that consumers don't really need to know where their beef was produced because they stated, in short, beef is beef, whether the cattle were born in Montana, Manitoba, or Mazatlan. As a mother or father that buys beef for your children, or as an American cattle producer who wants his or her beef distinguished from all the cheaper imported beef, what do you think about that? Now, fortunately, the courts ruled against the globalist beef packers and their allies and upheld the MCOOL law, which happened before Congress chose to repeal it 7 years ago. But what are the claims by industry economists that the repeal of MCOOL had nothing to do with the 2015 and 2016 collapse of cattle prices and associated increase in retail beef prices? Now, to answer this, I'll read another direct quote, this one jointly made by the beef packing cartel, the 4 largest beef packers in the U.S. Here's what they stated. In 2016, Congress repealed the mandatory country of origin labeling rule for beef. When the rule was in place, domestic feedlots could charge higher prices than foreign feedlots because of the premium paid for domestic beef. After the rule was repealed, foreign beef no longer had to be labeled as such. That spurred additional imports and caused domestic cattle prices to fall. That's not what RCAF USA stated. It's what the MCOOL opposing beef packing cartel stated. Yes, sometimes the truth can be stranger than fiction. So now that you know the truth, will you help us restore MCOOL for beef? Call your congressional delegation and urge them to support the 2 MCOOL bills, Senate Bill 2716 and House Bill 7291. and go to www.labelOurBeef.com to learn more. With that, have a productive week. Thank you and goodbye.